Hello, and welcome to the first video on this channel. My name is Deck Tips EDH Deck Building, and today we're doing our first Commander deck tech. We're going to be exploring a deck idea that I've had bouncing around in my brain for a while, and I've finally gotten it down onto paper, and I'm really excited about it. So before we get started, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy this content that I'm making. I'm going to put out one video every week, probably on Sundays, forever, really. That's my hope. Anyways, onto the video. I call this deck Sultai Painter, obviously. And even though we can't have Painter Servant in the command zone, it is our secret commander. We're going to get into that real soon. First off, the real commanders of the deck: Raihan, Last of the Abzan. Not really relevant to the deck's like strategy or anything. Just gives us access to black, which we do need. And then Thrasios, Triton Hero, green and a blue for a 1/3 legendary creature Merfolk Wizard. 4, scry 1, reveal the top card of our library. It's a land card. Put it on the battlefield tap, otherwise draw a card. Thrasios is actually pretty important to the deck because we're actually a little light on card draw, which is strange for a Sultai deck. But we are a little light on card draw just to pack any other stuff we need for the strategy. And it allows us to draw a bunch of cards when our other cards are not really doing that as much. So we still have a good, strong value engine that we can consistently have access to, and that's really important for Commander. All right, our secret commander, Painter's Servant. 2 mana for a 1/3. As it enters the battlefield, you choose a color. We're actually going to choose blue for this deck, and all of our cards in our deck are designed around every permanent in play being blue. So all cards that aren't in play, spells, permanents, and permanents, are the chosen color in addition to their other colors. So when we name blue, everything becomes blue. Cards in hand, lands, all permanents, cards in graveyards, cards in libraries. So that's the main enabler for this deck. We need a lot of ways to find it. So we have got Tribute Mage, search for an artifact with CMC 2, reveal it, put into our hand. We have all the good black tutors: Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, Wishclaw Talisman, Diabolic Intent, which might actually be our best use for Raihan, is to cast him, then cast Diabolic Intent and sack him again. Because again, we don't really need him much for this deck. He just enables us to have black. Sylvan Tutor, Worldly Tutor, just a really efficient green tutor spells. War of Invention and Fabricate are both artifact tutors. War of Invention can actually put Painter's Servant into play at instant speed for only 5 mana. Then Merchant Scroll can tutor up War of Invention if we don't have Painter's Servant in play. Or alternatively, if Painter's Servant is in play, it can search for any instant card in our deck, which is really, really strong. Alright, so since we have our commander doesn't go back to the command zone, Painter's Servant, we have some recursion spells. Reanimate and Animate Dead are some of the most efficient reanimation and recursion in the game. And then Noxious Revival has some tricks. It can actually be used as Graveyard Hate on our opponents as an instant speed by if they target a creature with their own Reanimate spell, we can put it back on top of their library so that the spell will fizzle. Or alternatively, we can use it at instant speed to recur our own Painter Servant back to the top of our library if our opponents have Graveyard Hate against us. On a card draw, we have Defiler of Dreams, 3 blue for a 4/3 flyer. As an additional cost to cast blue permanent spells, we can pay 2 life. If we do, those spells are reduced in cost by 1 blue mana symbol, which actually isn't super relevant because even with Painter Servant out, the trigger will go in the stack, but we can't use it because there's no blue mana symbols in the cost of spells that are blue because of Painter Servant but aren't normally. However, the relevant part is whenever we cast a blue permanent spell, we draw a card. So for every permanent spell we cast, artifacts, enchantments, or creatures, we're going to get to draw a card, which is really, really strong. Gadwick the Wizened, blue, and X. When he enters the battlefield, you draw X cards, which is some really nice burst draw. It's a 3/3, and whenever you cast a blue spell, you tap target non-land permanent and opponent controls. We can use this on our own turn to tap down blockers. We can use it to tap down creatures that are going to attack us on our opponent's turn if we have an instant. And we can also use it to stop some combos like Basalt Monolith. We can tap it when they try to untap it and just fizzle their combo. We have Unctus Grand Metatech, 1 blue for a 2/4 legendary artifact creature, Phyrexian Vedalken. Our other blue creatures have, whenever they can become tapped, we draw a card, then discard a card. Our artifact creatures get +1/+1. We can pay a Phyrexian blue, so a blue or 2 life. Until end of turn, we can make a creature we control, make a blue artifact in addition to its other colors and types. So it can act as a pseudo Painter Servant if we need it to. It's not nearly as good, but we can kind of do it. And we're going to get awesome filtering with all of our creatures whenever they attack. We can draw and discard and loot away bad cards getting new cards we want. It'll also buff our creatures when we make them into artifacts. Next, we have Flash of Insight. 1 in a blue and X for an instant with look at the top X cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest in the bottom of your library. That's not the best, but the flashback cost is 1 in a blue, remove X blue cards in your graveyard from the game. So basically we can remove our entire graveyard because we don't actually need anything in it except for with Painter's Servant. So we can just remove our entire graveyard and look at as many cards as are in our graveyard. It's amazing card selection. Finally, we have Dire Undercurrents, 3 Dimir Hybrid for an enchantment. Whenever a blue creature enters the battlefield under our control, we draw a card. And the same with black creatures, not as relevant. However, if we have a black creature that's blue because of Painter's Servant, we can draw 2 cards when it comes into play, which is really strong as well. Next, we have creature threats. First, Deep Channel Mentor, 5 and a blue for a 2/2. Gives our blue creatures are unblockable. In our deck, with Painter's Servant on field, all of our creatures become unblockable, and that's very strong. Just straight up unblockable all the time. Very, very powerful. Eyes of the Wizened, or Wizened, however you pronounce that. 1 and a green for Tribal Enchantment Elemental. Whenever an opponent casts a blue spell during our turn, we create a 4/4 green elemental token. So whenever an opponent casts any spells and we have Painter's Servant on the field, we get a 4/4 elemental if they cast it during our turn. So our opponents really just can't cast spells during our turn, or they're going to get beat down repeatedly. We have Una, Queen of the Fae, 3 and 3 Dimir Hybrid for a legendary creature, Fairy Wizard, 5/5. It's a flying. X in a Dimir Hybrid, choose a color. An opponent exiles cards on top of their library, equal to X. Then each card of the chosen color that was exiled this way gives you a 1/1 blue fairy. So with Painter's Servant, we're basically paying X to create that many 1/1 tokens. This gets out of control super fast, especially since we can do this at instant speed. We can do this right before our turn, untap and swing with all of those. Finally, we got Mistcutter Hydra and Shifting Ceratops, with both can't be countered and have prop blue. What this means is that they can't be blocked. They can't be dealt damage by other creatures. So they're really good attackers, and they're also really good defenders because they can't be dealt damage, but they can still do damage to our opponent's creatures. Next up, we have counterspells. This deck runs 11 counterspells, and all of them are at least equal to counterspell, and some are just straight up better. We got counterspell. We have Jace's Defeat that is 1 in a blue, so strictly better than counterspell for counter target spell. And if it's a Jace Planeswalker, we scry 2. Pretty good. Gainsay, same thing. We don't scry 2 though. We got Force of Will, always going to be good. Force of Negation, Commandeer, and Misdirection, which in this deck allow it so that any spell in your hand can be pitched to them. Very strong. Abjure, it's a blue, sacrifice a blue permanent counter target spell. Abjure is often held back by the fact you might not have a blue permanent in play. However, even your lands are blue permanents because of Painter's Servant, meaning you can sacrifice basically anything on your board that's not relevant to Abjure. It's just a straight up better than counterspell in a lot of cases. We got Spell Siphon, which counters a spell unless its controller pays mana equal to the amount of permanents we have, and they're never gonna have that much mana. Scent of Brine, 1 in a blue. Reveal any number of blue cards in your hand. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 for each card revealed this way. So we can basically reveal our entire hand to it if we really need to counter a spell, and they're never going to have enough mana to counter it. Finally, one of the best creatures in this deck, Brine Seer. 3 in a blue for a 1/1. You can pay 2 in a blue and tap it. Reveal any number of blue cards in your hand. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 for each card revealed this way. It's a repeatable Scent of Brine, so every turn that it's untapped, our opponents have to be thinking, do I cast a spell? Can I pay the mana? Are they going to counter it? And it makes a headache for your opponents and allows you to just keep repeatedly countering your opponent's spells, and it's very strong. Next up, we have Protection, because we do need protection for our Painter's Servant. We got Lightning Greaves, just one of the best equipment in the game, really. We have Spellbane Centaur, 2 and a green for a 3/2. Creatures you control can't be the target of blue spells or abilities from blue sources. So with Spellbane Centaur on the field, our creatures just can't be targeted by any spells or abilities. And none of our spells or abilities really care about targeting our own creatures, so it's only upside. Veil of Summer, draw a card if opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. Spells you control can be countered by blue or black spells this turn. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and from black until end turn. So just draw a card if opponent has cast a spell this turn. Spells you control can't be countered this turn. You have protection, or you have hexproof from blue and black, so everything this turn, and so do your creatures. Next up, we have some mana dorks. Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, Fyndhorn Elves, and Birds of Paradise. They're just pretty classic. Nightscape Familiar, 1 in a black for a 1/1. Reduces the cost of all your spells by 1 because of Painter's Servant. and it's a really good blocker because you can regenerate it. Our ramp, a lot of the standard ramp, Farseek, Nature's Lore, 3 Visits, Rampant Growth, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Sky Shroud Claim, and Wild Growth. Just pretty efficient ramp to just get us up to casting whatever we need to as fast as possible. Our removal spells, it's a lot of other standard stuff. We got Cyclonogriff, Damnation, and Toxic Deluge, just these very standard blue and black removal spells. However, we have some really neat tech with Luan, Cephalid Empress, 3 and a blue for a 2/3 legendary creature Cephalid. When it enters the battlefield, you return all blue creatures your opponents control your owner's hand, and then your opponents can't cast blue creature spells. What this means is that we bounce all. It's a Cyclonogriff for all of our opponent's creatures, and then they can't ever cast them again as long as Lawan is on the battlefield. And because we have 11 counter spells, they probably can't kill it. Hunter's Mark is 1 green because of Painter's Servant, can't be countered, gives a creature we control a buff, and then deals damage to creatures powered to target creature or planeswalker we don't control. Display of Dominance, 1 and a green, choose 1, destroy target blue or black non-creature permanent, or we can give our permanents hexproof from blue or black essentially until this turn. Finally, we got some one-off synergies. We got Riptide. It's basically a blue fog for 1 mana, making all creatures tapped. We got Seed Time, which is some really spicy tech in this deck. It's 1 and a green. We can only cast it during our turn, but if an opponent casts a spell this turn because of Painter's Servant, because it has to be a blue spell normally, we take an extra turn after this one. If an opponent ever casts a spell during our turn, we get to Time Walk. It's very, very powerful. We got Felon's Curse, green. Blue creatures don't untap during the control's untap step. However, you can pay a blue to untap a blue creature. If our opponents aren't playing in blue, they just can't untap their creatures ever. Very, very powerful. Finally, we have Grindstone, one of the best win cons in the deck besides from combat damage. Just 1 mana for an artifact, pay 3 and tap it. Target player puts the top 2 cards of his library into his or her graveyard. If both cards share a color, repeat this process. Because all our cards in all libraries everywhere are blue, you just mill them out. With 10 tutors in the deck, it's very easy to find. Put the combo up with Painter's Servant, Grindstone, mill all your opponents out one at a time. Very strong. Finally, we have the mana base. Just a very standard. We got Shocks and Triomes and Fetch Lands. We have a couple cards. We got Bojuka Bog because our deck doesn't really have a lot of good graveyard hate because it's trying to do so many things. And then Strip Mine for land hate. Again, same kind of thing. There are some permanents in the cards in the deck that can destroy lands, such as Display of Dominance, targeting a non-creature permanent, so it can hit lands. However, we still want the redundancy of Strip Mine. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. That's the full deck tech for Sultai, Painter's Servant, as a secret commander in EDH. If you like this video, please subscribe and like the video, and even leave a comment if you want. If you have any comments or critiques or advice for me as well, that'd be wonderful. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.